So if everyone has a scarf or a tie or a yoga strap, if you have a cushion, that would be good too, or a yoga block. I'm sitting on a yoga block right now. So two things, I guess. One is I'm going to be sending out an email to you all this week and just asking you if there's any limitations or if there's anything you'd like me to focus on in my yoga classes. You know, if you have arthritis or if you have a frozen shoulder, that's information that would be helpful for me so that I can give better variations and modifications. And what else was I going to say? Today's class, I'm still focusing on forward bends and still thinking a lot about osteopenia and osteoporosis. For those of you who missed Wednesday's class, so 55% of women over 50 have osteopenia, and that just means you're losing bone density. We actually peak at 35 years old with our bone density. And osteopenia can turn into osteoporosis, but not necessarily. And but there's things that we can do to make it better, and yoga is one of them. Weight-bearing exercises, diet, making sure we have calcium and vitamin D in our diet. So it's not all doom and gloom. But one thing for if you have osteoporosis, you're at a high risk for fracture, and the most common fracture is spinal fracture, and it's connected to kyphosis, the rounding of the spine. You sometimes see it in people. The upper back rounds quite a bit, and after a certain amount of years, that compression makes the bones very brittle, and then you can get a fracture in your spine. So the good news with yoga is that yoga really works to set the posture, get the shoulder blades down and back, and try to reverse any kyphosis that might be developing. So because of all this, the new movement in yoga is to do very little rounding of the spine. And because I'm doing forward bends is still my theme this week, there's a great tendency to round the spine when we go into a forward bend, because some of us are very interested in touching the toes, but I'm really going to be emphasizing extending through the spine and not touching the toes, and still feeling a great hamstring stretch. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on extended spine and practicing non-striving when we do our postures that challenge our flexibility. All right, enough of that talk. So I invite everyone to lie down, unless you prefer to do your time in sitting, but I think most people like lying down. And then we're going to do our warm-up lying down, and then we're going to transition into sitting, and we might even do a standing pose or two today. So we're going to start off in Shavasana, corpse pose, or as Hadi likes to call it, immortal pose. And so just settling into your mat and doing a time in, because we're transitioning into a different activity. So it's good to give the body and mind a minute or two to make that transition, so that we don't just cannonball ourselves from one activity into the other. So even in Shavasana, we still want good posture here. I'm even concerned about spinal extension in Shavasana. One thing you can do is just bring your shoulder blades in a little closer together underneath your back. And if your palms are facing up, it encourages those shoulder blades to come in a little closer together, so that we're setting good posture habits even when we're lying down. And then if you reach out through the crown of the head, which is not the top of your head, it's more at the back of the top of your head. And if you kind of reach out through the crown of the head, you're going to get a nice gentle traction to the back of your neck, which should feel nice. And then just checking in with yourself this morning. How are you doing? How's the physical body doing this morning? And so just being present for physical sensations that might be percolating up. Putting a flashlight of attention on different body parts, especially those parts in our body that are hot spots that we know we carry tension in, or we know there's some pain there sometimes. Just checking in with those areas in particular. And making a commitment to being extra gentle with those areas. Never going our full 100% with those areas, because that's how injuries occur. And we don't want to irritate anything. And also checking in with your energy level this morning. And accommodating the practice to the energy level that showed up today. You can always give yourself permission to skip a pose or modify a pose if it doesn't suit your energy level, or if it's maybe irritating a hot spot in your body. Next, checking in with your mood, any emotions percolating up. And meeting those emotions with soft attention. And bringing your awareness to the quality of the mind stuff. Is your mind feeling energetic right now? Is it feeling sluggish, maybe neutral? Reeling to the future, past? Or is it settled in the present moment? Just being curious about it all. The big play that's being performed in our head. And then finally the breath, dropping into the breath. What is the quality of the breath this morning in this moment? And we're going to go from breath awareness to a little bit of breath control, doing the 3-part breath. Moving one hand to the belly, and the other hand onto the heart. So we've been practicing, working on this breath for the last month. It's a very nourishing breath. Inhaling into the belly, side ribs, heart. Nice, slow exhale. Belly, side ribs, heart. Nice, slow exhale. Doing a few more rounds on your own. Modifying it however you need to. Slower, longer, shorter. You decide. before we add some movement to this all, just noticing how even 5 minutes of just stopping and going inward, has anything shifted in your nervous system, in your mind? And just meeting that with curiosity, also not judging anything, just kind attention. Starting to wiggle your toes a little bit and wiggle your fingers a little bit. And raising the arms up and back and giving yourself a good big morning stretch. And you can do the banana stretch where one hand grabs the opposite wrist and you pull yourself over into a crescent moon side stretch. And the other side. And then pushing the heels out towards the end of your mat, engaging those hamstrings and calves. And then relaxing your hands by your side and windshield wipers with the feet, one side then the other, and then back and forth. So we're waking up the ankle joints here. Circles one way, circles the other way. You can do flutterboard where one foot points then the other very rapidly as if you're on a flutterboard. And then we're going to do internal rotations. The toes come in towards each other, so that's internally rotating the hip. And then the toes come apart into like a Charlie Chaplin, that's external rotation. We'll just try that a few times, internally and externally rotating the hip. So we're getting some synovial fluid flowing between the hip joints when we do that. Just cushioning between the joints. Good. And then just bringing both knees up into chair pose, placing our hands onto our knees, and we're going to pretend we're on a Stairmaster. We're just going to bend the elbows as the knee comes towards our chest, and then the other elbows. So just pumping that each thigh closer to your body, then releasing. And then hugging the knees to the chest, tucking in the chin a little bit when we do that. And we can make circles with our knees. And just noticing, like for example, I'm noticing I'm getting a lot more sensation in one hip than the other when I do this. And reversing the rotation. So once again, playing with internal and external rotation of the hip. Good. And then dropping the knees to the outside edge of the mat. I'm still going to work on this internal, external rotation of the hip. Both knees are pointing to the sky. We're going to drop one knee in towards the midline of the mat. That's internal rotation of one hip. And if you push that knee towards the end of the mat, you'll get a thigh stretch here. And then release, float that knee back up. And then the other knee dips down, and we internally rotate the other hip. And if we push or pull that thigh towards the end of the mat, if that feels good and pleasant, do it. If not, don't do it. And release. You're just going to do this a few more times at your own rate, dipping one knee into the pond and then dipping the other knee into the pond. So you can continue to do the pond dip, or you can do a fuller spinal rotation if it feels good for your pelvis and sacrum and back, dropping the knees to one side. And we're just warming up here, so it's very gentle. Inhaling the knees back up and slowly windshield wiping the knees to the other side. So also with osteopenia and osteoporosis, we have to be really careful with spinal twist and really not going a full 100%. If you want to windshield wipe one more time. And just noticing sensations that percolate up here. Great. So next, stretching out one leg and hugging the knee to the chest or to the armpit. If you have knee issues, you can interlock your fingers around the back of your thigh instead of your knee, because there's a lot of knee flexion for some people. And so one knee is bent towards your chest, the other leg can be bent. If you straighten it, you get a psoas stretch. It's very light and mild. And so just decide, do you want to keep that other leg straight and stretched out, or does it need to be bent for comfort? So we're pressing into our colon here, so we're working on massaging the internal organs, by the way. And we're stretching the psoas muscle of the extended leg. And we're working on hip flexion and knee flexion. So we're doing a lot with this one simple pose. All right, straightening that right leg or left leg. And we're just going to lower it and raise it a few times. That starts to activate the core. And you're going to make sure that lower back stays neutral and doesn't arch up, and that your front ribs don't pop up. So you decide, do you want to make smaller motions? Do you want to make deeper motions? And then bringing that leg back up and rotating the ankle one way. And rotating the other way. And then we can do circles. So not just ankle circles, but leg circles. And you decide how big or small you want those circles to be. Good. And then grabbing the strap, we're going to do our first forward bend, hamstring stretch, putting the strap around the ball joint. So I've said a few times, I prefer the ball joint over the instep because I like to work on ankle flexion. So if I gently tug on that strap, I'm working at that the flexion of the ankle. Now, start a little lower, and then if you close your eyes, you can be a little more honest with your body sometimes, slowly raising that straight leg until your hamstring puts out the stop sign. So really dropping into the wisdom of the hamstrings. And at some point you're going to find what we call the edge in yoga, and that's kind of the midpoint between effort and ease. There is a good amount of sensation, a healthy amount of sensation, but not pain or discomfort. All right, and then grabbing the strap with the same arm as the raised leg, very gently dropping that leg open to the side, landing on the elbow. And you might notice the stretch has shifted to a slightly different part of your body. I feel it on the inside of my thigh, but you might be feeling it somewhere else. And we're going to keep the opposite hip rooted to the ground, so the foot is probably not going to hit the floor. Because if it does, that opposite hip just rolls right up. So I want to keep the sacrum stable, the pelvis rooted to the ground. All right, inhaling slowly, and the adductor muscles are kicking in now when we bring that leg back up. Good. And then we're going to bring the opposite foot up. It's going to go through the strap, and then we're going to lower the other leg. And just pointing and flexing that foot a few times. And then once again, just being curious, is this hamstring a little more open than the other? Is it exactly the same? So just experimenting with all that, being curious about it. And you can always do little micro movements. Once I'm in a pose, I like to do circles, point and flex. So always just exploring and squirming around and noticing how even subtle movements can change sensation. And then holding that strap with the same hand, dropping that leg to the outside. And dropping into physical sensations. And sending your breath to wherever you most feel the stretch. And then inhaling that leg back up, taking your feet out of the strap, and this time hugging that knee to the chest or the armpit on that side of the body. And once again, you can wrap your fingers around the knee or maybe the back of the thigh. And breathe into sensation here. You can do little micro movements, little tiny circles one way and the other, just exploring. Good. And then bringing both knees up, laughing baby, one of my favorite poses, maybe not yours. All right, so we're sitting in a chair upside down. So that's one variation. This could be your bus stop. You might decide to grab onto the calves and pull the knees closer in towards your armpits. You might decide to grab the outside of the feet. So really trusting the wisdom of your body to make this decision for you. And then just rocking side to side. Just do a little gentle rock one way or the other, and if it feels good, maybe go deeper. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. And then you can play with bringing one heel closer to the midline and the other heel closer to the midline. And just pretend you're a little baby in a crib and you're just playing with your feet and just squirming around, rocking, rolling, whatever feels good. And then sitting in your upside down pose or astronaut pose or upside down chair, putting the strap around your ball joint again. So this time we're going to do both legs straightening into a supine forward bend. And maybe we can just try bending and straightening the legs a few times, just warming that hamstring up, preparing it for a deeper stretch. And then I want you to straighten the legs, and that might mean you're at a 45-degree angle. It might mean that you're at a 60-degree angle. If you're super flexible, maybe 90-degree angle, maybe less than a 90-degree angle. So just really checking in at those hamstrings and asking them, if you are to keep your legs straight, what is a healthy angle? And we're going to take a snapshot of that because we're going to come back to it later. Now when you're in it, one way to get the hamstrings to release is to engage the quadriceps. So pulling up the kneecaps up towards your pelvis, engaging the quads, the thigh muscles. We're just going to hold that for a few breaths. working those quads. And that'll signal to the hamstrings to release. And then release the quads, keep the legs straight. And now just breathe into those hamstrings. And now that we've been holding this for a few breaths, we're going to take the screenshot, right? So our spine is perfectly extended here. And whatever angle we're at, that's the angle we're going to go into when we come back to this, because we're going to do a seated pose version later on in the class. So this is the angle. This is your angle, where you're stretching the hamstrings, but your spine is extended and happy. All right, and release, slowly taking that strap out. And rolling over to one side, we're going to work on clam pose. All right, so you have a block, just get it handy. You might want to use it, you might want not. All right, so clam, we're going to work on the abductor and adductor muscles. So the knees are bent, and just inhaling that knee up and exhaling it back down. So we're working the abductor muscles, which is in our buttock and down the side of our leg. And when we close the knee with control, we're working the adductors on the inside of the thigh. And you're also exploring the range of external rotation in the hip here. And the slower you do it, the more challenging it might be. And trying to keep the hips really stable, so not swinging the hips back, and just it's not a big movement. So if I keep my hips squared and don't move them, my clam opening is a lot smaller. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to layer this movement. We're going to bring that knee up, and then we're going to bring the ankle up, and then we're going to dip the knee down so that the knees kiss, but the ankle stays up, and then we bring that knee back up, and then the ankle comes to kiss the other ankle, and then we close it. So I'll do this again. We open the clamshell, the heels are touching. Now the heel raises, and we're doing an internal rotation of the hip. And then the knee dips down into the water, kisses the other knee, comes back up, and then the heel comes down, and we drop the knee. Opening the knee, lifting the ankle, dipping the knee, lifting the knee, bringing the heel back down, and closing the clam. So we're just going to do that a few more times, go at your own rate. So just working on that internal, external rotation of the hip, and also working the abductor and adductor muscles. Good. All right, so we're going to swing to the other side, or you can just turn yourself over on your mat. I have to swing so you can see me. All right, so heels are touching, inhaling that knee up. You can place your hand on that hip just to make sure that hip isn't moving around too much. So inhaling the knee up, exhaling back down. The hips stay squared and aligned. All the movement is coming from the leg. And the pelvis stays static. And just noticing what's external rotation like on this side. All right, and then we're gonna add the little flow into this. Okay, so all right, inhaling the knee up, heels are touched, but now the heel raises, the knee dips into the water, kisses the other knee, comes back up, then the heel drops, and then the knee drops. Inhale the knee up, then the heel comes up, then the knee dips down, the knee comes back up, and the heel comes down, and we close the clamshell. All right, we'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling, kind of coordinating the breath in some way. All right. So I'm going to wake up the internal obliques next. We're going to grab our block or a book, or you can just squeeze your thighs together if you don't have a block or book handy or a pillow or something. So we're going to come into supine chair pose. That block is going to be squeezed between our thighs. And the arms come out to the side. And do you want your arms in cactus? Do you want them in an A shape? So you decide. Do you want them over your, I think cactus, it opens up your pecs, but if it's not comfortable, then go into an A-frame. All right, palms up. That gives me better posture. My shoulder blades are closer together. I'm going to pretend I'm a clam, and that block is a pearl. I don't want to lose the pearl, so I'm squeezing that pearl. And then I'm going to roll over to one side, not all the way down, just halfway or so. And then using those obliques, inhaling back up. And then a wave comes and blows that clamshell the other side, squeezing that block. And then inhale back up. And experiment. Do you want to exhale as you roll down, or do you want to inhale as you roll down and exhale as you come up? So I have a preference, but I want you to experiment with your preference so that you start to think about coordinating breath with movement and what feels more natural to you. Sometimes I tell you what breath to use, but sometimes it's good for you to explore on your own. So remembering not to over twist, less is more. The purpose of this one is to strengthen the oblique muscles. And then bringing the mat down. And we're going to either spinal rock our way up, or we're going to go onto our side and push ourselves up with our hands. So I like spinal rocks, but there's a lot of people who don't like spinal rocks. And coming up to seated. So this is where if you have a block or a book or a blanket, we're going to do a few minutes in seated pose. So the reason I like to sit on the block is A, it's more comfortable, but more importantly, if I sit on the edge of the block or the book, it tilts my pelvis forward. And I have better posture now. All right. So a lot of times when you're without a block, this pelvis posteriorly tilts and it strains the lower back. When we sit in a block, my pelvis anteriorly tilts. So think of this as like a shelf. So you want the pelvis to tip interiorly, not exterior. So we don't want to be like this. We want to be like this. And I find it way easier to do when I'm on a block. All right. Now, if you have like lordosis of the lower spine and too much of an arch in the lower spine, your job is to actually pull that belly button in. So if you know you have a really big dip in your lower spine, you're working on the opposite. All right, so this is our seated pose. Let's stretch out the side body. Inhaling the hands up, come up and over, and then just release, circle down. The other hand comes down, reach over, release, circle. So we're just going to make this really fluid. Good. And then baby spinal twist, bringing one hand to one knee, the other hand behind our hip. When we do a spinal twist, we always need to have the spine extended. So inhaling up through the crown of the head, and then just exhaling into a 50% spinal twist. And release, and switching over to the other side. Inhaling always up through the crown of the head before we go into a deeper twist. So the inhales are used to pull up through the crown of the head, extend the spine, and the exhales are used to either go deeper into the twist or to just hold and release. All right, let's grab the strap. We're going to wake up the chest area and the shoulder area. So let's just bring the arms out for start. We'll use the strap in a second. So these are our cactus arms. These are our W arms. These are our letter Y arms. All right, so we're gonna go into cactus. We're gonna squeeze that cactus closed, ouch. Inhale, open, W and Y. Back to cactus. Squeeze into that cactus. Exhale, open, W, Y, cactus, close, squeeze. Inhale, open, exhale, W, inhale, Y, exhale, cactus. One more time. Good, and then just kind of go back and forth like a washing machine here, not too much, just gentle ones. Good. And then grabbing the strap, we're going to floss the shoulders, or towel or scarf or whatever you have. So going up into the Y and then dropping the hands back and behind, loosening that strap so that we can maybe get our hands back. Now, this might not be available if you have a frozen shoulder or something happening. It might just be this. Right? So it could just be little movements. So work within your range of motion. I know when my shoulder was frozen, there was no way I could do this. Good. And then try tightening the strap or your stance a little bit more. And see if you can go into a W with the strap coming behind your head without bowing your head forward. So you're maintaining that good traction in your neck, nice, and then you're just kind of going up and down. Now, if this is impossible, the strap can go in front of you instead, right? And so this is definitely challenging for my shoulders, and I can feel those shoulder blades coming in really close together. And so we're just working on awakening the muscles that allow for good posture. All right, good. And then putting that strap, actually let's hold on to that strap and go into cow face arm. So the elbow that's up, we're gonna coax it back. We can stop here and just do a little side stretch. All right, or we can bring that other arm back and behind, grab onto the strap behind us, puff up the chest, pull in the belly button a little because I can feel my lower spine overarching when I puffed up my chest. And some people are able to grab their fingers behind their back, others are not. That's what the strap is there for. And then once again, we can give ourselves a little side stretch by bending away from that higher elbow. Good. And release. And bring that shoulder over and across and giving ourselves a shoulder stretch. And the other side, and not expecting the other side to be the same. So variation 1, variation 2, variation 3, and release. And now we can let go of the strap. I'm not sure if I stretched out this shoulder. All right, and eagle arms. So eagle arms, review. Variation 1, elbow on top of elbow. Squeezing the elbows into each other. Variation 2, And you can do variation 2 with a strap also, so that over the weeks you can work on tightening that strap. And variation 3 are the palms together. All right, so sitting up nice and tall and straight, arms pull into the shoulder sockets, elbows come up as high as is a safe challenge for you and your shoulders. And then the invitation is to squirm around and explore all the nuances of this stretch. And just noticing how changing positions changes the stretch. And so what you're doing is you're just kind of exploring, trying to discover your stress signature. Is there anywhere in your shoulders or neck or back where you tend to hold your stress? We all have our spots. And if you can locate that spot that feels extra tight, the invitation is to pause and breathe into it and just send it a kind and nourishing breath, giving it some time to release and relax before you move on to other movements. And then coming up for the final squeeze. I like the final squeeze because it strengthens all the muscles around my shoulders, my elbows, my wrists. 3, 2, 1, release. All right, so some arm circles. Start off small and then see if you can make them bigger without pain. And if there's a lot of repetitive clicking, that's a signal to make the movement smaller. And reverse, and it might be different in the reverse. You might have to make the circle smaller. Good. And then eagle arms the other way. So variation 1, variation 2, variation 3. I'll do variation 2. And so once again, pulling the arms into the sockets, lifting the elbows up a little higher if that's available. And then starting to squirm around and notice what's percolating up. Dropping into the 3-part breath. And then coming up for the final squeeze, squeezing all the joints into each other, hugging all those joints into each other. 3, 2, 1, and release, shrugging out the shoulders. You're going to inhale the shoulders up and go a nice slow. Inhale up, nice slow. One more time. Good, let's work on those wrists a little. So wrapping the fingers around the thumbs, rotating one way, and rotating the other way. Good. Blinking lights. Shaking out. And the forearm stretch. So straighten the arm, pulling the fingers, one way. Pointing down, the other way, pointing down. Good. All right, so last but not least is the neck. So we're going to look over our right shoulder, notice the range of motion, look over the left shoulder, and which side has more range? And it might be the same. You want to check that out again, just to be curious about the neck. And not pushing it, just kind of when does your neck now actually want to stop? All right, and then just doing, we'll check in at the end, doing, after we do a few of these, doing some nose circles. So this is a small movement. Close your eyes if it makes you dizzy. And reversing. And next, dipping the ear towards the shoulder and stretching out the opposite arm. Now, if you want a little more sensation, you can rest this hand on the head, but not pushing it, just resting it. You can even wiggle those fingers and kind of what's happening in this side. It's a pretty intense stretch, I find. And then release, trying the other side. So I'm going to try without the hand first, just check it out. Reach out that hand. I now feel this in my neck. Do I want more sensation? Do I want to rest that hand on my head, or is it enough? And release, shrugging out the shoulders. And I really like this neck massage. So we bring the fingertips just behind our ear. You're going to feel kind of your skull. And then you're just going to press those fingers as you go down diagonally onto your collarbone here. So you control the pressure. And you can maybe feel, I can feel how tight my sternocleidomastoid is here. Ooh. So you never want to go to the front of the neck, right? So we're just kind of going down to our collarbone. And the other side. You can just massage it however you feel it needs to be massaged. Oh, okay. And one last one. So to get the neck muscles to release, we're going to do the opposite. I've done this one before. We're going to lightly press our head into our hand and our hand into our head and resist the urge to overdo it and like press really, really hard. We don't have to, it can be a light press. Breathe. 3, 2, 1, release. And now look over your right shoulder and just notice if your range of motion has improved. And do the other side, hand into head, head into hand. Don't forget to breathe. Sometimes when we clench our muscles, we stop breathing. 3, 2, 1, release. All right, and now look over that shoulder. Okay, so that's our warm-up. Toe right up to the head. We're going to get on to tabletop next. And we're just going to, this is like your 30 seconds of freestyle. You're going to just move however you want to move. And just breathing into the movements, and you can close your eyes here and just intuitively, how does your body need to be moved right now? If you want to join me in the next movement, I'm just going to work on those internal external obliques through a thread the needle. And so I inhale my arm up, and then I just exhale, thread through the needle, and then inhaling back up. I'm just going to do that a few more times. And then I'm going to come up and do the other side. coming into tabletop. All right, so I want to do a standing forward bend today. So this is my transition up into standing. You can do your own transition if it doesn't work. I'm going to go into garland pose, or I call it praying frog, curling the toes under, walking our hands back, bringing the knees up and out to the side. And then the hands come to the heart. Now, this is a lot of flexion for the knees, so for some people it's going to look like this, all right? And this is where we can practice good posture. The shoulders roll back and down. The heels can be on the floor, the heels can be off the floor. And if I press my elbows into my thighs, I can get a bit of a groin stretch here. And then I'm going to bring my arms out to a 45-degree angle. I'm going to press my heels into the floor and slowly, slowly come up to seated. I'm going to change my camera angle a little. Okay. All right. And just swaying side to side here. And you can come up onto your toes and bring your arms up and then release. Come onto your toes, arms up the other way. So just getting a nice fascial stretch down our body. Good. All right, so forward bend. So I want to talk a little bit about forward bends because it's really mistaught, in my opinion, in a lot of yoga classes. So a lot of times in yoga classes, in sun salutation especially, you'll come down into a forward bend. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on my lumbar spine, and if I'm doing this over 30 years, and then I'm getting a rounded upper spine, and etc. So I'm going to teach you how to do a very safe forward bend that is optimal for spinal health. So the feet are hip width apart. I'm going to inhale the shoulders down and back. The feet are parallel. And I just want you to notice one thing. If you open up your palms, what happens to your shoulder blades? Right? So a lot of times mountain pose, you're asked to have your palms open because it brings the shoulder blades in a little closer behind your back. All right, and then for some people, if you have a sway back in mountain pose, you have too much arch in your back, in which case you're just going to pull that belly button in a little bit. All right? So mountain pose, you could do a whole class just on mountain pose. All right, so from here, we're going to go into awkward pose. We're going to bend our knees, and the arms are going to come out in front. Now, for awkward pose, you still want to be able to see your big toes, because a lot of times we get out of this, we try to get out of doing the work, and our knees come way in front of our toes. So you're going to pull your knees back, all right? And we're not going to round through that lower back, so resist the urge to round. So you're going to extend up through the spine. I can just barely see my big toes. My knees are in line with my toes. All right. Shoulders, arms are pulled into their sockets. And you can pulse up and down a little bit. So we're giving ourselves a little bit of a thigh workout here. Good. Now, from here, we're going to place our hands on our knees. And then we're going to pull those shoulders back. And we're going to start to straighten the knees and come into a supported L stretch. All right, and the weight is going to come into the ball joint. So there's a tendency to want to be in the heels. I'm going to invite you to come into your ball joints, and I'm going to ask you to pull your kneecaps up and engage those quads, because remember, engaging the quads actually gets the hamstrings to release. So this is a really safe way to do a forward bend, and you can see, like, look how extended my spine is compared to this, and where gravity is really pushing down on my spine. Now, if you're super flexible, you can try this with a block. So extending down. All right, but if this starts to happen, this is where I'm going to ask you to be really honest with yourselves, then it's better to do the supported L stretch. And you can keep the knees bent, like, you don't have to straighten those knees. So if you try it with the block, the other thing is start with a bent knee and then start to straighten it. And even before I straighten my knees, I'm feeling enough sensation here that I actually don't need to straighten my knees to get that stretch, because I'm feeling quite a bit right now. Now, if you have a wall, the other way to do a really good L stretch is against the wall. And when I do it against the wall, I'm getting a good shoulder stretch also. So if you have a wall handy, I invite you to just try that. And you know, your hands can be higher up the wall, they can be directly in front of you. And you'll feel something in your shoulders maybe if you try it against the wall. So these are all different ways, safe ways to do a forward bend. And if you ever have to do a sun salutation, a really great way to go into the forward lunge then is move the foot back first and then come down. And so it's also an easy way to go into a sun salutation, which I'm not teaching, by the way. All right, and then inhale, engage those thighs, use the buttocks to get you up, and then inhale, back up. All right, so that was a little lesson on forward bend. I'm going to get us back on the ground. Next week, I'm going to do a little bit more standing poses. We're going to do downward dog and then a balanced pose, but this week I'm going to get us back on the floor. So once again, I always think about nice transitions and how to get ourselves back to the ground without just plopping down. I'm going to do a half sun salutation. We're going to inhale the arms up and then exhale, come down halfway into our half forward bend. We're going to extend that right leg back or left, put a hand on the floor, slide the other leg back, drop the knees, uncurl the toes, and slowly lower ourselves to the ground. Bringing the arms out to the side to a 45-degree angle, reaching one leg back, reaching the other leg back. We're going to inhale, press the hand to the floor, and come into a locust, a half locust. So your back muscles are doing some work here. Check in with them, make sure they're safe and happy, but doing a little bit of work. Breathing into the belly. If you want, you can lift the legs up also. Engage the buttocks and the back body to do that. Breathe. Good. And release. Place one hand over the other. We get to rest here for a few breaths, rocking the hips side to side. We'll release the lower back. And perhaps closing your eyes. And just taking 5 breaths here. Back bends stimulate the nervous system. And when you come out of a back bend, usually the nervous system just really releases. All right, so from here, we're going to transition into tabletop. We're going to bring our hands to our shoulders and then just push up into tabletop. And from tabletop, you can, okay, this is my preferred way. I like to cross my ankles and roll back onto my buttocks. But for other people, they're just going to come onto one hip and bring their feet in front of them. So however you need to do this transition, we're going to end off with our forward bend. We're going to do a classic forward bend, and we're going to do a wide-legged forward bend. You see me? Okay. So remember we took that screenshot at the beginning of the class. We're going to come back to that screenshot. Now, this is where I really love walls. If in your screenshot, when you were lying down, you had so this is a 90-degree angle. When you were lying down, if you had more than 90-degree angle, you're going to put that strap around your ball joint, and you're going to be like this, and the shoulders roll back and down, and my spine is extended, right? Because that's the most important part to me. Or if you were 90 degrees, you can use the wall, right? And we can just work on that. In that case, you don't even need the strap because you have the wall. If you were less than 90 degrees, you need the strap again. In which case, I'm like maybe 5% less than 90 degrees. So you decide where you are. Now, there's little tricks again. I'm going to go over them. So one is ballistic stretching. So just kind of bending one knee, relaxing it, just kind of warming up those thighs. So you're going in and out, in and out, in and out really quickly, all right? So the other one is to engage the quads. So you're going to pull up on the kneecap, engage the quads, and that gets the hamstrings to release a little more. So that's our second little trick, and I have a third trick. So just hold for a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1, release. And now maybe you can go a little deeper, but we're practicing non-striving, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, the final trick that I have is bend the knees and then drag those heels in your mind towards your buttocks. And that's going to engage your hamstrings. And just how we pushed our hand into our head and our head into our hand, and we contracted those neck muscles in order to get them to release, we're doing the same thing with our hamstrings. We're engaging those hamstrings, holding them 3, 2, 1, and then when we release those hamstrings, they're going to go, I'm ready for a deeper stretch. All right, so here's our deeper stretch. So whether you're here or against a wall, we're going to take 10 breaths. And forward bends are about surrendering to the present moment, to whatever shows up today in yoga class. And just breathing into that present moment of the hamstrings. And if you're tight somewhere else in the body, that might show up also, and we're going to meet that also with kind attention. Whatever percolates up, it's all good. Just breathing into sensation. Deciding when enough stretch is enough. And just a reminder, the shoulders roll down and back. The shoulder blades pulling together behind your back. Extending through the spine, through the crown of the head. And then slowly, slowly, slowly coming out of the pose. And our last pose, forward bend, wide angle. We're going to bend one knee. I call this can opener. So where's the foot? Is that foot going to kiss your knee, your thigh, your groin? You decide. I'm going to grab the strap again. And just keeping a nice extended spine, coming forward. So the chest is over the knee. And then you decide the angle that's safe for your body. And I'm noticing for me, you know, I'm not getting it in the hamstring now, I'm getting it in the hip because it's externally rotated, right? So wherever I'm tightest, that's where the stretch is going to show up. All right, and coming back up. And we get to do the other side now. Shoulders down and back. And just using the exhales to release and relax into the stretch. Letting go, letting go. Perhaps closing the eyes here. Dropping into breath. And a little bit of attention to the neck here, so you don't want to be tucking your chin in and you don't want to be hyperextending your neck. You want to just imagine that there's a straight line going up your spine, up through your neck, through the crown of the head. Right here's the crown of the head. So you're probably gazing at your knees and calves. to come out of the pose, we're going to use an inhale and we're going to come out really nice and slow, not like an elastic band shooting through the air, and release. And now the final forward bend, wide-legged forward bend. Now, if you're a 90-degree person, you can use the wall and go into your forward bend like this, and then you get to lean against the wall. And I like the wall because then I can kind of get my shoulders against it, my head against it. I have really good posture here. Now, for some people, that 90 degree is not a happy degree for them. So you're going to bring your hands behind you. I'm going to do less than 90 degrees, and that's going to be your bus stop. If you're very flexible, you can grab your block, bring your elbows onto the block, but you know, I'm on that, I'm going to do a higher level because I feel like I'm starting to round a little bit here. And you'll notice if you flex your feet, you're going to get more hamstring stretch. So decide what's your flavor today of forward bend. And so you might notice that the stretch, when we spread our legs apart, the stretch sometimes it comes into our adductors, so the inside of our thighs. That might show up somewhere different. Ah. Three more delicious breaths here. And with each exhale, letting go a little more, softening into those hamstrings. And then saying goodbye to that forward fold, inhaling slowly, coming up. And getting ready for the magic moment, Shavasana. So if you don't like to lie down, I'm going to stay seated, but you can lie down, you can do this seated. Lying down feels great though, so encourage you to try lying down. So remember that if your back is feeling a little tender, you're going to bend your knees and let the knees collapse in towards each other. That's a restorative pose for the lower back. And I invite you to just maybe do even a few windshield wipers down here. So it's nice to end a yoga class with A, forward bend, and B, windshield wipers, because they just reset the spine and calm down the nervous system. So it's always a great way to end. So today's meditation is called Smiling into Open-Hearted Presence. And the intention of this meditation is to bring kind attention to whatever arises in the meditation today. So let's just start with the breath. This is the mantra I like to do with breath. Because the air is cooler against my nostrils on the inhale, and warmer against my nostrils on the exhale, that becomes my saying to myself, cool, calm, inhales, warm, relaxed, exhales. Cool, calm, inhales, warm, relaxed, exhales. And really basking in this feeling of letting go on the exhales. And then just settling into the natural rhythm of your breath. Perhaps a little more shallow now that we're not doing any activity. A little easier, less labored. Inviting your kind attention into your eyes. Smiling into the eyes. Smiling gets your body to release endorphins, dopamine, serotonin. It's the feel-good yoga posture. So smiling into the eyes, and maybe even feeling the corners of your eyes form little smiles as the eyes release and relax. And feel that smile extend into your brow. So your eyes are smiling at your eyebrows, and your eyebrows are looking back down into your eyes and smiling back. And the worry lines in our forehead, they turn into smiles now. And then perhaps the bloom of a smile on your lips starts to form. And if you smile with your lips, it actually gets your jaw to release and relax. And then feeling that smile permeate your whole head, right up into your ears. Your ears are smiling now, your scalp. And that smile melts down to your throat. And perhaps feeling the throat open and relax and soften. And then your shoulders get in on the action. Filling the shoulders with healing, caring energy. Where so many of us hold our tension. Letting go of the shoulders as they melt into the mat. And imagining that healing warmth melting down into our arms. So that even our hands are making us smile with our cupped hands. And then perhaps visualizing a curve of a smile spreading into our heart. Holding our heart tenderly with loving kindness. Gratitude for the heart that works so hard for us. Feeling the curve of that smile spread to our belly, creating openness, aliveness in the belly. And feeling the warmth of that smile, healing us into aliveness, peaceful abiding. And feeling that smile melt into your legs, your feet. The whole body filled with the sunlight of vast, open-hearted presence, filled with love and peace. Letting go, letting go. At some point you might notice that your mind has wandered to thoughts of the future or past. At that point we just smile to ourselves because that's natural. And just letting the pathway back to presence be without judgment. And reopening back to kind attention. If a difficulty does arise in our mind or body, can we be with it? With an attitude of gentle kindness, perhaps saying this too, this too. Making room for it all. And then very slowly and lovingly prepare yourself to come up into seated pose. And if you want to join me in my final salute, making a flame with our hands, inhaling our flame up to the sky. When we float our arms down, we see ourselves healthy, happy, peaceful. Bringing that good energy back to our heart, giving ourselves a little bow for making the world more peaceful with our yoga practice, thanking the body, and thanking each other for this community. Thanks for showing up today. It's my honor and pleasure to be a teacher.